it has not caused any issue, right? It has not caused any issue for creating the table. Let's see how it has created internally. In order to see the DDL of the table which has been used to create the table, you need to fire show table command. If you see here, it has again pulled out set table. Okay, it has again selected it as a set table. So by default, even if you specify or if you are not going to specify, it is going to be a set table. Okay. So along with the set table, you are going to have another kind of table called multi-set. So what is the difference between set and multi-set? When you need to go for a set and when you need to go for multi-set. Okay, these are the things we need to know. So here I am dropping the table and recreating the table like exact replica of the previous one, like primary index on customer ID. I'm just creating it as a set table with what is the index you are seeing now? Is it a unique primary index or it's a non-unique primary index?
Non-unique.
So I'm going to create this set table as a set table with non-unique primary index. So now I have created the set table with non-unique primary index. Now I am going to insert the records into this table. Insert into financial.test20. It is a replica of an existing table called customer. Insert into financial.test20, selecting it from customer table. What is the output you are seeing in the bottom? Completed 1000 rows process, right? Means 1000 records were selected from the customer table and they were inserted into the test 20 table, right? Now I'm going to execute the same command for the second time. Let's see what will happen. What is the output you are seeing?
0.
Does it mean like is the script errored out or it has executed successfully?
It has executed successfully.
It has executed successfully, but whatever be the 1000 records that were selected from customer table were not inserted into the test 20 table, right?
Yeah.
So what happened to those 1000 records? Where they have gone is the question, right? It has selected 1000 records from the customer table. In the previous case, you have seen like completed 1000 rows processed, but now why it is saying completed 0 records processed? It has taken out the 1000 records from the customer table, but it has not inserted into it. The statement itself has executed successfully. It has not given out any kind of error message or warning, but it has silently skipped the insertion of the records. Not even a single record has got inserted, right? So what happened to these 1000 records is whenever you create a table as a set table, okay, whenever you create a table as a set table, the behavior of the set table itself is it will maintain the uniqueness of the data. It will never allow duplicates into the table. Okay, the set table will maintain a unique behavior. It's not going to allow the duplicates into the table. Here, first time it has allowed the 1000 records. When I am firing the same query again for the second time, what it is doing? it is silently skipping the rows. Already there were 1,000 records, and what are the next 1,000 records that were coming into the table? All those were the same records like the existing 1,000, right? So that is the reason why it is skipping those records. Okay. Now let's do an update statement on this. I'm just incrementing the age by 1 for every record. Okay. Now will it execute or not? If I say insert into financial.test20, selecting it from customer table, will it is going to execute now, or it's not going to execute? Is it going to copy the 1,000 records now, or it is going to silently skip the records? Any guess?
It may not insert.
Not insert. Let's see. I'm pressing F5. What is the output you are seeing?
Yeah, it inserted.
Completed 1,000 rows processed. Why it has inserted already the 1,000 records that were there in the customer table were already there in test 20, right? But why it
Mm-hmm.
has not inserted in previous case, and why it has executed in the current scenario? Employee ID, employee name, department number, salary. Employee ID is 1, employee name is ABC, department number is 10. Salary is going to be 10K. Employee ID is 1, name is ABC, department number is 10, salary is 11K. Will you say like both these records are same records or different records?
Different
Can you
records.
say the first record is the duplicate of the second record, the second record is the duplicate of the first record?
Mm, yeah, possibly.
Here, if you are looking it here till here, yes, it is a possible duplicate. The second record could be a possible duplicate of first record. But whenever you are looking in terms of the salary column, on the whole record wise, it's not a duplicate. It's not an entirely duplicated record, right?
Correct.
So they may be different records. Here the possible case is my index might be index is non-unique primary index. That's why it has allowed the duplicate in terms of EMP ID, right?
Okay, okay.
Otherwise it has errored out when I was inserting here, right?
Correct.
So what is the thing I have done in the previous step? I have updated the age column by 1, right?
Okay.
So after that it has succeeded in terms of insertion. Whatever with the existing 1,000 records and whatever with the new 1,000 records that were coming into this table, they are differing in age column,
Okay,
right?
okay.
The new 1,000 records that are coming into this table are differing in
Age
age
column,
column,
okay.
right?
Okay, okay.
So that is the reason why it has allowed. If there are entirely duplicated records in a sense, the third record is an entirely duplicated record of the first record, right? Every value in each of the value in each of the cell is going to be the same. It's representing the same. Employee ID is 1. Employee name is ABC. Department number is 10. Salary is 10K. Everything is same when compared to the first record. Then in this case, it is the entirely duplicated record, and this is the record that's going to be silently skipped off from
Okay.
processing. from inserting. So whenever they, yeah, any question?
No, no, go ahead.
So whenever there is a case of entirely duplicated records, then the set table will silently skip off those records from insertion into the table. Those records, the entirely duplicated records will not be inserted and they will be silently skipped off from the insertion process. That is the
Okay,
reason why it has not allowed the 1000 records in prior case, and in the later case as they are differing in age column, that is the reason why it has allowed those 1000 records.
okay,
Clear?
yeah,
So now let's see the scenario 2. Dropping the table, and now I am creating the same set table with unique primary index. Okay. I'm creating the set table with unique primary index. For the first time, I am inserting the record from customer to test 20. What is the output? 1000 records were inserted into test 20 table, right?
yeah,
Now I am going to again execute the same query. It has not errored out. It has executed the query successfully. Completed 0 rows processed, right? Why it has skipped off? Because it is a unique primary index, right? It should give me an error, right?
correct,
But here all the records that were coming are entirely duplicated records. So it's not even trying to insert the records. So it has skipped off those records. If it has tried it, then it would have resulted in an error, right? Let's see. I'm executing the same update statement which is going to update the age. Now it's going to try to insert the records because they are not entirely duplicated records, right? I have updated only the age column. So the records which are there in the table test 20 and the records which are there in customer table are differing in by the age column, right? So
yeah,
it will try to execute the data, it will try to insert the data into the test 20. But now you can see the error that has given up saying duplicate in unique primary key error in test 20 table. It should allow because they are not entirely duplicated records. But what is happening? Whatever the values that were there in the customer ID column in the prior case and this case are same. Being the unique primary index, it will never allow the duplicate to be inserted into the table. Right?
okay,
Clear?
yeah, right,
So in case of a set table, it will allow it's not going to allow the entirely duplicated records. It's not going to cause an error, but it's going to silently skip
yeah,
off the records from processing. Okay. So what about this multi-set table? What is the use of this multi-set table? It's purely
hello, hello, let me,
set table. It's going to be a reverse way. What is the behavior of set table? It's going to maintain the data uniquely. It's never encouraging the duplicates, right? Whereas with the case of multi-set table, it's going to allow any number of duplicates. There is no restriction like this one duplicate or two duplicates. Whatever the number of duplicates you will insert, it will allow those many duplicates. Let's see here. I'm creating a multi-set table this time. First scenario, I'm going to use it as a non-unique primary index, multiset with non-unique primary index. So I have created the multiset table with non-unique primary index. For the first time, I'm inserting the data into the table. What is the output? 1000 rows processed, right?
Yes.
And now I'm executing the same query for the second time. What is the output?
1000 rows processed.
Again, it has inserted the another 1000. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. So it's going to allow the duplicates into the table. Whatever be the number of duplicates, it doesn't bother. It's going to allow even the entirely duplicated records into the table. Clear?
Yes.
So multiset is a reverse of the set table where it's not going to bother about the data that is coming into the table. It is even ready to allow the entirely duplicated records into the table. Okay?
Okay.
Now we will see the second case of the multiset table where we are going to have a unique primary index. I have created a multiset table with unique primary index. Okay. For the first time, I have inserted the 1000 records. I'm again trying to execute the same. What is the error?
Duplicate.
Duplicate in the indexed column. As per the definition or as per the multiset table's behavior, it should be ready to allow the entirely duplicated records into the table. But what is happening and what is stopping it?
New primary index.
Yes. So, but the actual scenario is multiset is going to allow even the entirely duplicated records, but because of having the unique primary index, you are not going to have the entirely duplicated records sorry, you are not going to be allowed to have a duplicate value in the indexed column. Okay, because of the primary index, it's not allowing the duplicates. So a multi-set table with a unique primary index will have an identical behavior like set table because it's not allowing the duplicates. Okay, so multi-set table which is having a unique primary index will have a bit similar behavior in terms of set table where it is not going to allow the duplicates. So coming to the set and multi-set table comparison. So if you are not specifying the table type, whether it is a set or multi-set, by default it is going to be a set table. Whereas in terms of the speed, in terms of loading the data into the table, the loading will be a bit faster in multi-set table compared to a set table. Okay. The loading into a set table is slower when compared to a multi-set. It will be faster in case of only the multi-set table. So what is the specific reason for that? Why it is faster in case of multi-set tables? Okay. That is the question. So whenever you are inserting data into the set table, you have inserted a single record into the table. Now whenever you are inserting the second record into the set table, what will happen? It will check with the first table whether it is a duplicate record of the existing table or not. Duplicated record of the existing record or not. If it is not a duplicated record, then it will allow the record. Okay. If it will check for whether this record is a duplicate of existing record or not. If it is not the duplicate, then only it will insert. So whenever you insert the third record, it will also check with the existing two records. Like that, there will be a comparison for each and every record in the table that it is going to take. So because of that particular comparison or checking of the duplicates for the incoming records, it's going to slow the process. So what Teradata has come up as a solution for this is, rather than comparing the each and every value in each of the cell, it has minimized the comparison only for the indexed columns. Okay, it has minimized the comparison only for the indexed column. So whenever it encounters a duplicate, okay, whenever it encounters a duplicate in the indexed column, then only it will go for a byte by byte comparison of the data. Otherwise, it's not going to have a comparison of byte by byte. It's only going to check in the indexed column. Is it clear till this point, Rajesh?
Could you explain the
Rajesh?
second part?
Sorry?
Could you explain the second part where you said the comparison will happen?
Yeah. What is the behavior of set table? Set table will never allow the duplicate records, right? If it is entirely
Correct.
duplicated record, it's going to skip off the record from insertion, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So whenever, let's say I have a set table, I have inserted the first record into the table.
Okay.
I have inserted this particular record into the table. Okay. So whenever I inserted this record into the table, it will allow. First, being a first record, there are no existing records to compare. So whenever I insert the record into the table, this second record into the table, it will check with the first record whether it is a duplicate of first record or not. Okay. So when I insert the third record, then also it will check for with the existing two records in the table whether the new record that is getting inserted into the table is a duplicate of the existing two records or what. Like that, if I am inserting the fourth record, it will check with the existing three. So like that, it will compare with already existing records in the table in order to check whether the record is a duplicate of any of the existing records. So it is spending some extra amount of time in terms of checking for the duplicate case.
Okay,
So
got
it's
it.
going to take more time. So what Teradata has done is it has reduced this comparison time on only checking for the indexed column. It has minimized this time on allowing the duplicate check only to the indexed column. It will never go for a byte by byte comparison on checking each and every value in the cell. It will check only the indexed column. If it encounters any duplicate in the indexed column, then only it will go for a byte by byte comparison with comparing the each of the value in each of the cell. Until unless it doesn't encounters the duplicate in indexed column, it will never go for a byte by byte comparison. That's how the comparison time has been minimized.
Okay, so this holds good even for set and multi-set, or is it only for multi-set?
It's only for set table. Because of that, it is taking a bit more time in terms of a set table. Whereas in terms of a multi-set, it's not going to go for any kind of byte by byte check comparison in case of a multi-set table. That is why it is a bit slightly faster in terms of inserting the data into the table.
Okay.
Clear?
Yeah, okay, fine.
So in terms of the tables also, whenever you are looking at in terms of the types of the tables in Teradata, along with the set and multi-set table, these two tables are said to be tables of permanent tables. Permanent tables means whatever the tables you are creating here as the permanent tables, they will reside in the database you drop them explicitly. They will be created. Once they are created, they will remain in the system even after the session is disconnected. They will remain forever. The data as well as the structure of the table both are going to remain forever until they are dropped explicitly. Okay. There are some temporary tables in Teradata system. There are two types of temporary tables. One is global temporary table and the other one is going to be volatile table. Okay. In terms of temporary tables, there are two types of temporary tables. One is going to be global temporary table and other is going to be volatile table. Even in case of global temporary and volatile, you can specify it as a set or multi-set. Okay. So what is the difference that it is making when I am saying it as a global temporary table or volatile table? Before going to this, we need to know like the space in Teradata is also segregated into three things. One is permanent space, the other is spool space, the third one is going to be called as temp space. So are there three kinds of disks in terms of Teradata system where each category will have a separate disk of its own? Means no. Everything that was there on the whatever the space that were there on the Teradata system is classified like this: permanent space, spool space, temp space. Whatever with the physical disk space you are having is altogether called as a permanent space. A chunk of permanent space will be made as a spool space and a chunk of some other chunk of permanent space will be treated as a temporary space. So where it is getting in terms of difference, to whom we are going to assign the permanent space, to whom we are going to give out the temporary space or spool space is the question. Okay. Before going into this, I just want to tell you a basic difference in Teradata where we are having. Like here I have connected the data, connected as a DBC user. I have logged in with the user ID of DBC. Okay. Here I have logged in into the database. I have established the connection with the database with the user DBC. Actually, DBC is the supermost user in Teradata system who can do anything on the system without any interruption. Okay. He is the supermost user like a root user in the system. You can also call it as all the dictionary tables on in the system, Teradata system will be under will be under database DBC. Here I am calling it as the user DBC sometimes and the database DBC sometimes. Okay. Here I am calling the user. Let me show you. When I say help user DBC, it is giving me the list of the objects that were under the user DBC. It has given me 479 records. What is the sum of records it has given as the output now? What is the number of records you are seeing? It has given the same 479 records. So in terms of Teradata system, can we create a database and a user with the same name? Are we going to have two entities in the Teradata system? One with the name of the user and one with the name of the database? Means it's not going to be the case. In terms of Teradata system, the user and database are the terms which we are going to use in a vice versa manner. Okay, those are the terms we are going to use interchangeably. So whenever you are logging into your Gmail, what are the things you need to have? You need to provide to log into your Gmail account.
Username and password.
Username and password. If you are providing the username, will you able to log in into your account without providing the password?
No.
Why you need to provide the password? You are providing the username, right? What is the necessity of providing the password for your thing? Any specific reason?
To authenticate.
For authentication, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, in terms of getting a session established between you and the database, session is nothing but the dedicated connection between you and the database is called as a session, right? If any of the user is able to log into the database, it's not going to be a secure thing, right?
Correct.
So that is the purpose of having a authentication. The session should be authenticated by some mechanism, right? That is the reason why we'll be using the password, right? That is the reason why we'll be using the password to have a secure connection established between you and the database, right?
Okay.
So in terms of the user ID, whenever you are logging into the database, a database and the user are almost same in Teradata database, but they are not exactly identical. They are almost identical, but they are not identical. So what is that slight factor that is differing the user and database? You are having your Gmail ID. You are having your Gmail ID where you can have your password, where you log in only into your specific account, right? Similarly, in order to establish the session, the database is getting authenticated, the session is getting authenticated because of this password field. The user is the one that is having this extra privilege of getting authenticated in Teradata system. Okay, the user is the one who is having this extra privilege of having the authentication mechanism because he is the one who is having the password parameter. Okay, he is the one who is having the password parameter. Because of that extra privilege, he is the only user who can establish a connection with the database. Whereas the database not having this externally provided authentication mechanism, it is the passive entity, so it is not going to have the capability of having the or establishing a session. Okay. So that is the only difference in Teradata. If you want to create some tables under user, you can create it. If you want to create user under a database, the database will allow the user to be created under its hierarchy. If you want to create a database under the user hierarchy, it will allow. Let me show you in the administrator tool. If you see here, DBC is the one topmost in the hierarchy. You can see the tables and views, everything created under it in the hierarchy. But in general, the objects will reside in database or user. In general, in any database, objects will reside in the database, right? Here, that is the reason why every time we'll be using the words database or user interchangeably. You can create the tables under user or you can also create the tables under the database. There is nothing to stop you. If you create a table under a user space, you can provide the access to the other user to access that particular table in created under user space. Okay. If you see here, the database DBC is the dictionary database and he is the supermost user in Teradata system. Okay. Rajesh, clear or confused?
No, no, it's fine. I'm clear.
Okay. So the only difference is the password parameter. Let me show you how we will be creating in general. I'm going to show you the fields. Database is having its own database name. Owner is under which hierarchy you are going to create it. Perm space, pool space, temp space. These things we will discuss now. The rest of the fields, whether it can be before journal or after journal or fallback. Okay. In terms of creating a user, the fields you are going to fill out. User, owner, password, perm space, pool space, temp space, or account, right? The journals, before journal, after journal, fallback. All these things which are there in database are also there with the user, except this is having the extra privilege of password, right? So
Correct.
it's almost similar, but it is lagging by means of the authentication mechanism, so it's not able to establish the session. So how the user is able to create the tables under its own space, or what are these spacing conventions? Permanent space, pool space, temp space. If you have a 1 terabyte system, out of that 20% of out of that 1 terabyte, 20% of the space will be given to the dictionary growth, because dictionary is the table, data dictionary is the one that will keep track of the changes that were happening entirely on the system, right? So all the system related activity for that growth, system related activity purpose, 20% of the total disk space will be allocated to the dictionary. Out of that, 10 to 15% of the space will be kept as a reserve for school. It's not going to be a separate entity. It's a entity that has been reserved. Some amount of space that was there on the disk has been kept as a reserve, which we are calling it as a spool. And 5% of the space or 10% of the space will be kept as a temp space, and rest of the permanent space will be used for creation of the objects on the system. So what is the necessity of classifying the space into three entities? For what purpose these segregated entities will be used? So we'll go again back to the school. This is the value 11, and this is the value you are giving. What could be the final result? Whenever you are adding 11 to 19,
30.
uh, don't think with the perspective of a graduate or a postgraduate. Think it in terms of are you married?
Yeah.
Do you have children?
Yeah.
What they are studying?
No, 10 months old.
Okay. So you have joined your kid in the play group. So teacher has given a homework to add these two numbers. So your child has came to you asking how to do this. Think it think it in your child perspective how to do it. 1 plus 9 is going to be 10. It is going to have a carry 1, right? You are going to write 1 here and 0 here, right? After that, you will be adding these two, and whatever with the carry you are having in separate, where you have kept it in some other location, or on the slate you will be writing on the top. So totally you will be adding the 1 and 1, 2, and whatever with the other carry you have, which is the temporary result that was generated, that will be stored in some other area, that you are bringing in again, and you are writing the value 30 and you are wiping it off, right? This is how you will be doing, right or wrong?
Correct, correct.
So what is that extra one you are writing in the temporary area, or which is coming as a carry? Is it going to be a permanent value, or it's a intermediately generated value? That is a value that has been generated intermediately, right?
Correct. Correct.
So in that case, so it is the value that has been generated intermediately. So in that case, whatever the value you are getting here, it's not, it's again used by some other process, or it may not be used. It may not be necessary to track this. After once you got the result 30, it's not necessary to track that value which has been carried out, right? So
Correct.
it's a intermediate value. So in that case, similarly in terms of whenever you are processing certain values, select 19 into 2 by 4 plus 70. So it gets executed by means of the operator precedence, right? So it is going to generate n number of values as the intermediate values, right? So in that case, where the query is getting executed. So whenever you execute a particular query, let's say you are trying to retrieve the data from two tables, select star from table A comma table B, where table A dot column 1 equal to table B dot column 2 and table A dot column 3 equal to certain value. So how it is going to retrieve? It is trying to retrieve the records from both the tables which are satisfying the condition of column 1 equal to column 1. Out of those records, you are again filtering the values which are having column 3 with certain given value, right? Like that, you are doing n number of filtrations, right or wrong?
Correct. Correct.
So in those things, whatever be the queries you will fire on the system, they will be executed on the system, but they are going to use a space called spool. Spool is also called as the query execution area. The transaction area is nothing but the spool. Okay, just a
Okay.
second. So the transaction area or the query execution area is nothing but the spool. Whatever be the intermediate results or whatever be the intermediate files that were generated by the query as part of the execution of the query, all these will reside in the spool. Okay, the intermediate query execution area is nothing but the spool. What are with the intermediate values, like the carried forwarded one value, right? That is also be stored in the spool. Those intermediate values all together will be stored in the spool. If any intermediate aggregations of a query are need to be processed, they also will be using the spool. The entire query is going to be processed in the spool. Once the final result is sent back to the user, whatever be the spool that was used by the query will be released, because that content is a volatile content and it's not necessary as the result has been sent back to the user. Clear?
Yeah.
So that is the reason why the spool is released back once the query result has been sent back to the user. That particular um, oh shit. That particular transaction area is said to be called as a spool. Okay, so who is going to be assigned with the spool means a user should have a spool whenever he is running a query, because user is the one that has established the session with the database, right? So being the one who established the session with the database, he is the one firing the query, right?
Correct.
So user for sure should have the spool allocated to him. Okay, in some cases you'll also be allocating the spool to the databases. It's a different case where you'll be allocating a spool to the user databases. The reason is whenever you are creating the users under a database, in order to pull the spool, you will be allocating it from the database or from the parent database. That's a different scenario that will be taken care by your DBA. Okay, but in terms of our perspective, spool is nothing but the transaction running area. Okay, and one more thing is the spool is the shared area. If you add the spool space that was given to all the users in the system, it will be more when out of the total spool on the system. If there are 10 user IDs, if you add the spool that was allocated for these 10 user IDs, it will be more when it will be more rather than the spool allocated at the system level. So why it could be the case? Out of the 1 terabyte, I have kept 15%, so 150 GB as the spool space. But when I am adding the spool allocated to all these 10 IDs, it is resulting me in 200 GB. So how come it is going to be a possible thing? So how it is giving me out 200 means whatever be the spool I'm allocating. Let's say for Rajesh user ID, I'm allocating the spool as 50 GB. So it means that out of the total 200 GB of spool or 150 GB of spool I have at the system, I'm placing a cap saying that out of the total 150 GB that was reserved as a spool on the system, he can use a max of 150 GB. So all the users, 10 users are resulting in total. If they logged in at a time, all together they can use on the system level, they can use a max of 150 GB. So it's a shared space. Clear? Rajesh? Clear, or you want me to repeat
Yeah,
once
got it,
again?
got it, sir.
Okay. So it's
No,
a
got it, sir.
shared space, and the amount you are allocated is not the reserved amount for you. It's the cap that was kept on your ID. It's not the dedicated spool assigned. No user will have the dedicated spool. That is the cap that was kept on their user ID. Okay, that was the cap the user can use to a max. So
Okay.
now coming again back to the permanent space. So whatever be the tables you are creating here, create table, whether it can be set or multi-set, whether it can be anything. Whatever be the tables, you are creating it as a create table. So they are going to consume the space called permanent space. Permanent space is the one that is going to be used by the objects that we are creating. The objects which are using the permanent space are the objects that are going to be permanent in nature. Okay, the data will exist even after disconnecting from the session. Even the structure of the table is also going to exist after disconnecting from the session. Okay, so what about this temp space? Temp space is the one that the space consumed by the tables that are temporary in nature. Global temporary table is the one that is going to consume the temporary space. Okay, temp space is the space used by the global temporary tables. Okay, now let me create a global temporary table. I'm dropping this financial.test20. I'm going to create a global temporary table. In order to create a global temporary table, I need to precede it like create global temporary table. Table has been created, right? Now I am going to insert the data into the table. insert into financial.test20, select star from customer table. So what is the output? 1000 rows process means 1000 records are inserted into this global temporary table, right?
Correct.
But when I'm doing a select star from financial.test20, it is showing me only the skeleton of the table. It's not showing me the data.
Correct.
Right? It's not showing me out the data. I have inserted this statement, I have executed this statement successfully, but I'm not able to see the data. What could be the reason? Let's see how it got created internally. Did I mention this clause when I'm creating the table?
No.
Did I mention this one? It has
No.
taken this clause by default. When I'm creating this table, when I'm inserting it, Teradata is a database that is always, there is no need to specify the commit statement explicitly. It's a auto commit one. Whenever you are running any transactions in Teradata mode, it is going to commit it's going to save the changes automatically. Once the transaction is completed, it will supply the commit automatically. So what does this statement mean? On commit delete rows. So once this particular insert into test20 selecting from customer table is done, means once the 1000 records were inserted into this test20 tables, it's supplying a commit explicitly, which is resulting in deleting of the rows. Once the commit statement is encountered, it's asking to delete the records, right? So how should I overcome this one? Means I need to specify it as on commit preserve rows in order to avoid this deletion of the records. Okay. Now I'm again inserting the records. Okay, 1000 records were processed, right? By default, it will be having on commit delete rows. So that is the reason why you need to specify explicitly on commit preserve rows. Okay. Now I am able to see the 1000 rows, right or wrong?
Correct. Correct.
I'm able to see the 1000 rows that were inserted, right?
Correct.
Let me show you. I have logged in with the user ID. Select user will give out the user ID with which I have logged in. Okay. I have logged in with the user ID DBC. And when I say select star from financial.test20, I'm able to see the 1000 records, right? Let me log in from another version of SQL Assistant. I'm using select user command. So again I have connected with, I'm going to use the same user ID. So when I fire the select user, it's going to give me out the same user ID, right? It means that I have connected with the same user ID, right? So when I fire select star from financial.test20, what it is giving? It is giving me only the structure of the table. It's not giving me the data, right?
Correct.
So what happened? If I'm not having access to that particular table, if I'm not having access to that particular table, it should have resulted in me saying that the user does not have access, right? But I
Correct.
am using the same user ID connected with a different session where I am able to access the table. But in the other session, I am able to access the data, but in some other session which I have connected with the same user ID, I am not able to see the data. But still I am able to access the table, right?
Correct.
I'm able to access the table, but I'm not able to access the data, right?
Yeah.
So if that is the case, if there is data, if I have the access, if I have access to the table, then I should be having access to the data also, right?
So the global temp is only for a particular user session.
That's what I have logged in with the same user ID in both the sessions, right?
No, for
DBC is the user ID and DBC is the user ID. In both the sessions, I have logged in with the same user ID.
but these sessions are two different sessions, right?
Okay, but I'm able to
But
access the table, right?
no, since it is declared as global temp, so the table is remaining, but the data is specific to a session.
Exactly. So what happens in terms of the global temporary table is the structure of the table is going to be shared across the sessions, but the data is not going to be shareable across the sessions. The reason why the structure of the table is shared across the session is the definition of the global temporary table will be stored in the dictionary.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So it is stored in the dictionary. Let me show you. So there is a dictionary table called dbc.tables where you can see the details of all the tables, where table name equal to test 20. In this table you can see who has created the table, in which database it has been created. Okay, what is the DDL used for this? This is the create global temporary table, right? So here it will keep track of, in this particular dbc.table system table, it will keep track of all the tables that were created on the system. Okay, so as it is getting tracked in the dictionary, so the structure of the table is getting accessed across the sessions. But whereas the space that was used by the data is, right, it is going to be the temporary space. And once if you disconnect from the session, whatever be the data that was there in the temporary table will be wiped out, but the structure of the table will exist. Okay,
Okay.
even after discontinuing from the session, the structure of the table will still exist in the system, but the data that was there in that particular session will be lost. So that is the case of the global temporary table. Clear?
Okay. But what exactly is the use of this global temp table?
See, the use of global temporary table is if you are having a huge amount of data that is getting processed. Okay, if you want to store that particular data in a temporary table, in those cases, and if you have this global temporary table, whatever the intermediate results that were getting generated and using high amount of spool, right? In those cases you can use it. So if you are forgetting to drop the data, if the data is not needed, if you are using this, it's not going to create an impact on the system, like it's not going to consume the space. Even if without your knowledge, once the session is done, once the sessions are logged off of that particular job, the data is going to be wiped out from the system. Like that, you are going to save the space. At the same time, as you are using global temporary table, right? So whenever the job uses the same table next time, it's not going to fail saying the table does not exist, right? So in those cases,
Okay.
you will be using these global temporary tables.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Rajesh, we'll stop it here for today, and we'll discuss the volatile tables. Are you going to be available in the evening?
Hello.
Yeah. Are you going to be available in the evening?
Yeah, yeah, I'm available in the evening.
Okay. Can we have a session for another 1 hour or so in the evening at
Yeah.
8:30?
8 till 10:30?
8:30 p.m. today.
Yeah, 8:30 to 9:30 or 10:30?
I didn't get you.
No, is it 1 hour or is it 2 hours?
It's going to be 1 hour.
Yeah, no issues, not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
If
and
possible, I'll give a call. I'll ask Ram to give a call if possible in the afternoon. Okay. If it
okay.
is it possible for you in the afternoon?
Yeah, I have a power center training from 10 to 1 today.
No,
So
after
after
1 o'clock
2,
only. After 1 o'clock,
yeah,
if possible, I'll ask you to give a call. If it is
okay.
possible in the afternoon for me, we'll have the session in the afternoon only. Otherwise, we'll have it in the evening. And from
Yeah,
tomorrow onwards, we'll have it at 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. in the evening. Okay?
okay, not an issue. Yeah, not an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Yep,
you.
yep, thank you.